my name is Chantal Chindareta. This is Kenyan Design Conversations, and I am your host. With me, I have a very prominent lady. She is very spectacular. She designs so well. She has made a career out of it. Now, nataka awaambie, ye akwe wa kuambia who she really is. Mi nitamwanga sana. Hi, Wangui.
Okay. Hi. Thank you so much for that introduction. I will invite you to my wedding as the MC. You should do such a good job. Yeah. Yeah. It's important. So anyway, yes, I am Wangui Commander, and I have been a designer for a little bit over 3 years now. Let me start with something personal. I love cats. I have a cat, and for the sake of this recording, you will not be seeing him because he's very noisy. I have jumped. He's called Hayes, Hayes. So when I was naming him, because he's been with me for a very long time, I was not very witty, and then I learned how to be witty and to banter and to have jokes. Then I regretted the name choice. Yeah, so he's been with me since I was in campus, and that is like 5 years.
Wow.
So anyway, outside of that, I came upon design. It wasn't my dream career, but now I really enjoy it, and it has informed some of my future plans. So I've really come to enjoy it. I wanted to be a software engineer at first. But I didn't have the right guidance to get into tech as a software engineer. So I wanted to be a software engineer, but I didn't have the right guidance to get into tech as a software engineer. So I got in anyway. So nimeanzia wapi? Okay, I wanted to be a software engineer. I didn't have the right guidance to get in, so I decided to be a data analyst because I also really like data. And I was a data analyst for a year before I came upon UX design, and I thought it was kind of interesting because as a data analyst, I used to design dashboards, and people liked my dashboards. I mean, so I figured I have a flair for the design. I didn't do any boot camp. I just went online on YouTube because I did my degree off YouTube. So I have a lot of trust in YouTube. So I went to YouTube University, just did a few videos, started making things here and there, and then I got my internship as a designer at a startup in agri-tech. So now it was bringing together all my favorite things. It was bringing together data, machine learning, AI, and design, which was really cool. And that first opportunity to work at a tech startup, agri-tech startup, has kind of cemented a couple of things that I'm very interested in. So right now I work at Sama. It's an AI annotation services company, and I work there as a product designer, and it's a really cool field to be in. AI right now is very exciting to be in, especially that close. So that's my professional introduction, unless you have other questions.
Actually, mi nitakuona nyuma ya tent, especially your story ya co-design with AI and stuff. Yeah.
Why did you decide to leave? I mean, why did you decide not to be a software developer? Because I'm a software developer.
I didn't decide not to be. I just decided on an alternative route to still get there. So I still want to be an engineer, just not a software engineer. I want to work in research as an engineer. But I decided that since I felt like I didn't have the right people to help me out, like nikaamua kama shortcut haifanyi kazi, let me just pitie bypass, nikifanya vitu zingine as I head towards the same direction. So I'm not sure though. In Kenya, I think like a bypass is a shortcut actually. So I think it should be the other way around. But yes, it's not that I don't want. I know at the software engineering level is where so many things get created, but I've also gotten an appreciation for the supporting roles, which is like data analyst, business analyst, design. So I think right now I would make an even better software engineer because of all these other skills that I have.
Nice.
Plus I did code for a while. So
That's nice. You wrote a bit of code. Ulikuwa unaandika na language gani unitishie? Ilikuwa
Ngoja. Kumbe that's the difference. Kuna write code na kuna kuwa developer. So I wrote code. I was not a developer.
yes.
And
Yeah, I get you. I also wrote code. I was not a developer. So I did Java.
oh.
Yeah, I did Java a long time ago when I can't remember what this specific Java technology was, but I really liked it and it was really good at GUIs. I did Java. I've done Python. Python happens to be my favorite. And JavaScript is a pain in the teeth, but I tried it a little bit.
Okay, let me introduce myself. I'm Elvis Mariga, software developer. Napenda kuendesha pikipiki. Kwanza hizo bypass nimesema nimepita mingi. Na pia nimeanza kupenda design. That's why I'm here to learn from you.
alafu kuna msee ukweli tu amesema hanmute mpaka nimintroduce sawasawa. So with me, my co-host Elvis and our guest Wangui is my very dearest co-host Ndiama. Masterpiece art. Yay!
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, my name is At Ndiama. I'm a designer. I'm a programmer. I'm a mobile developer using Flutter, and I'm a student, second year. I mostly don't say that part because immediately watu wamesikia your part wako like, what are you doing with grown-ups? What are you doing in the big table? Go and play in the kiddie pool. What are you doing here? So, because most of the time most of the time I talk, nikiongea bila kumention hiyo kitu, people are like, can we hear Ndiama's perspective? Can we hear you? And it's good until I say my age or level yenye niko, and they're like, nah, what? Anyway, so yeah, I'm a mobile developer with Flutter, and I'm on a journey cyber tech this year. So by March, I will give you people feedback.
Hey, give me your grace. You're progressing nicely. Hey,
Walai.
na uko second year bado.
Si pole basi. Ndio maana hakuwa naongea mpaka nimintroduce. You deserve it.
Yeah, and I'm a poet and I write songs. Like you have a voice. Kuja.
You write songs.
Yeah, I write songs.
And you're a poet. Ulikuwa wapi tukiwa na poet mwenzako hapa? We had a guest here who was a poet. Mpaka akanipea poem. Ilikuwa before or after Valentine's?
Last week.
Personally, I believe your parents are poets, Chantel.
My parents.
Ebu sema jina yako full. Wangui ebu sikia jina. Yeah, just say your full name.
Chantel Cynthia Chendereta.
Wow, that's such lovely names. Oh my gosh, I'm such a
wazazi wageni ukama up na hiyo jina. Mimi my name imebidi nimecurate on my own. Ningezaambia jina yangu.
Tuambie, ongeza mic number 4 tafadhali.
Anyway, it's in the Bible and all my siblings tumename you according to the Bible.
Amen.
Hallelujah. Praise the Lord.
Amen.
It is not a Bible character. My name is not a Bible character.
Sasa utasema?
Yeah.
Sawa. Wangui.
Struggle kufikiria.
Sasa Sasa.
Yes.
Sawa basi. Wangui, so now that na imagine kuna times you had to what's it called? You had to pitch ideas, right? Like you have design ideas, you have to pitch them to clients or to your bosses. Kulikuwa unafanyaje?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Especially to more experienced team members.
Well, so I think I still do until today, just because, the people you're pitching to are just not designers only. They're also devs. They are management. So of course, even as I progress, there will always be more experienced people than me in the room as I pitch the ideas. They just don't have to be designers themselves. Or it doesn't have to just be my boss, if I could put it that way. So I wanted to first of all start by answering this question by saying, so the prompt you sent me was how to make team members accept your ideas or decisions as a newbie. And my first point was you can't make anyone do anything, by the way. So start there. Start by accepting you cannot make anyone do anything. That's really important. I think people, yes. Mtu akiamua na accept idea zako ni kwa sababu ni yeye anataka. Ni kwa sababu umeresonate na yeye, si kwa sababu yako. You have given them enough reason to trust what you're saying. When you look at it like that, then it becomes less about the idea and more about communicating to people, because that's the most important part. Yeah. Kind of like how, I want to say kind of like how people say shouting is not communicating. You cannot communicate at a person to make them hear you. People decide to hear you. So it's kind of like that. Go on.
That's a very different perspective. Right?
Wallahi. Okay. So I was not prepared for this, Mihawa. Let's put you bomb after bomb. Mihawa, reality checks. It's okay. So okay, when you say it like that, then what does that mean? It means that I need to get to a level at a point where neither resonate now, say, and we can communicate. So if we can't sit down and talk, it just means that hakuna kitu utasema utasikia unless ni makosa.
Well, that's a false assumption. I think you see the way in school, when you start class 1, you don't usually learn all of mathematics. Alafu you graduate from mathematics, and then you learn all of English, and then you graduate from English. You see, they've put the curriculum in a way that you learn mathematics up to the level of age 9. You learn English up to the level of age 9. You learn science up to the level of age 9. And then when you go to class 2, you increase. They don't make you learn all of maths from start to finish, and then they say, that's how umemaliza maths. That's how umefanya English. Then you go do English. So it's not that you can't. You can. And even in the minds of these people, they usually know you're a junior. So they are not expecting you to validate your ideas at Steve Jobs level, pull neck and all, and he moves the crowd. Nobody's expecting that from you, but they're still expecting improvement, and they're also expecting to be able to understand you. So there's a basic level you can start at. It's not that you want to be listened to. I have been listened to, and I don't think I have a monopoly on good bosses. I think very many other people have good cultures, working with good supervisors or good bosses that will be able to listen to them. So I think the better way to phrase that prompt would have been to justify. You can justify your decisions. That is okay. People will choose to take that justification as truth, but all you're doing is justifying them. You can't make anyone believe in them. Kind of like how beliefs work. So I'm also very big on psychology, so I'm going to be throwing some stuff at you, like you said, perspectives you haven't thought about. Yeah, so I don't see product design as just the Figma part or as making software look good. I also look at it as making people feel good. People enjoy experience of stuff. So yeah, it's about justifying. And then, you present someone with the facts. They go to a room. They think about the facts you presented them with, and then they decide, oh yeah, this is valid. I agree with this. And they will only agree with it from their experience, which is why you can't make them agree with anything. If I come and tell you guys, the matatu industry could use an app, you will accept it or deny it based on your experience with using matatus. Kuna mzungu atasema, yeah, I feel it would be better than standing kwa stage. Unachomwa na jua, unangoja. You just ask for it on the app, and then ikifika stage, unakimbia haraka, unaenda unaingia. But there'll be a Kenyan who will be like, that is wasting my time. I want to find a matatu the moment I leave my home. So who is wrong and who is right? There's nobody who's wrong and right there. They're just explaining it from their point of view. So the point is to sway as many people to your side. It doesn't have to be everyone. It just has to be majority or the big stakeholders. If you sway them, I guess people don't have an option but to do what you've talked about. But the point is to sway people, not to make anyone believe anything or accept anything. Umenyamaza. Ama natumia Kiingereza nyingi sana.
Ni kweli ilikuja na meli tena usiku.
Those were some heavy hitters. Before like I kept going, because basically chenye nimesikia ni mse ata decide kusikiza chenye unasema na kumaanisha perception ya chenye umesema ndio design ataelewa. So akidecide kuiperceive in an offensive way ni hivyo, akidecide positive way itakuwa hivyo. So you need to get to a point where at least you can justify why you made the decision you did, yeah, and swear as many people as you can. Nice. Wacha kwanza you think.
Yes.
I feel we summarize the whole thing.
Hata tunaweza funga podcast hapa sasa.
Diema, do you have a question for Wangui?
Right now, not yet.
Sawa. Maringo, uko na swali?
Mi nilikuwa namuulizia mwalimu wako wa kizungu anaitwa nani? Wa kizungu.
Ati mwalimu wangu. Kwa nini nimetumia sana? Okay, I'll try mixing it in. Yeah, I will do my best.
Hakuna pressure. Wewe kuongea kizungu ongea.
You made me realize like I need to change my friends at least. Nianze kuongea kizungu.
Yes.
Yes.
I think nimepata swali. Yeah, I've remembered the question. I had a question at the beginning, then ikapotea. Remember, she started saying that she went to the prestigious university called YouTube. And my question is, I'll use myself as an example. And I'm sure there are a couple of listeners who also have this experience whereby you've done some things online. And number one, you don't have an actual certificate because some people learn things online, right? You just have the skills. And you don't have experience because when you do stuff from YouTube, the only thing maybe you can do is maybe open source work, like free work online. Like one big thing that I have really suffered with for the longest time, I'm still fighting it, but not as much as before, is this thing called imposter syndrome, whereby you come into the field. Of course, you're sure you've met people who are from Moringa, people who are from universities, people who have actual degrees, and then you're there, and you're like, "God damn, ninafaa kuwa hapa kweli." I might go back and listen to welcome to my YouTube channel. Yeah.
Oh my God, you brought back such a core memory learning, what is it called? This topic about pointers, internal variable pointers and whatever, learning that from...
Data structures.
Yes, data structures, learning that from our Indian professors, and they're usually the smart ones. But hey man, you brought back a core memory.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so your question is, you don't have experience, how do you make people...
Like, you don't have experience, number one.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have experience. You're straight from YouTube University. So you don't also have papers. You just have the skills. And you don't know if you're good enough because you've not experienced the actual work life. In terms of, haujawahi kanyanga kwa place ya design. Hujawahi kanyanga office, hadi ujui, unajua tu things that you've learned online. And things that you've done maybe because huwezi enda kutafuta job kama we've not practiced. In most cases, we advise people to practice with the open source work, right?
Yep.
How do you tell that person you apply? Let's say if you're using LinkedIn, you're using options like, oh, there's this site I found, it's great, it's called Fuzu. I don't know if you know it. All these places to look for work, most of them are asking you for experience, asking you for papers. Like, how do you go around, number one, finding a job, and number two, dealing with that thing of imposter syndrome because you're scared of applying because hauna papers, remember? You don't have actual experience in an actual organization. I don't know if I'm understandable.
Yeah, I get you. Okay.
Yeah. So there are like two questions in there.
I will preface this by saying my journey into the work field, into working, was unconventional. I didn't tarmac, so I understand if some of these points may not apply to everybody. However, I think for people in the fields of tech, specifically, actually, can I be specific to anything? I feel like people in the field of tech, I'll speak about software engineers and designers. For you to get to the point where someone is hiring you, they just need to see something. It doesn't have to be real experience. I never had real experience. I had a portfolio. Even when people like come to my LinkedIn DMs and they're like, how can I get started? How can I put myself out there? Should I do? And then they send me a list of certifications online. Some are free, some are not free. Personally, my advice is always do not pay money for any UX design knowledge. There are very many free sources there, but you'll have to do the work of consolidating them and making sure you learn as much as you can. Number two, certificates don't matter in design or software engineering unless it's like an AWS certification that is highly sought after, or cybersec. In cybersec, I know certifications are very important. So that is a different field. But in design, if I ever became a manager, I wouldn't care that you went and did design on, I don't know, Google or whichever other big place. I want to see your work. I just want to see stuff designed and see where you're at and as far as design is concerned. I want to see a portfolio where you walk me through why you made this decision. Why is this button put here as opposed to there? Why did you go with a mobile app as opposed to a web app? What makes a mobile app more efficient? I just want to know how you break down things. And that's what I did. I knew I didn't have experience as a designer, but I had experience as a data analyst. So I was like, I am going to make whoever is interviewing me appreciate everything else around my experience. So yeah, it's fine. I don't have design experience and I have like 1 portfolio, 2 portfolio projects. That might not meet the threshold, but I'm going to make you appreciate everything else about me. One of the things I always go like into interviews is my ability to speak, to present my ideas, to defend my ideas. I don't have to convince you. I just need to communicate properly for you to understand. That's all I need. That's all I have convinced myself I need. The moment you realize how good a communicator I am and being a meme who want to break down a problem into pieces and like deal with everything, that's it. Because a designer is not just their design work. A dev isn't just their code. You know, yeah, of course you should be efficient. You shouldn't be verbose in your code. You shouldn't be this and that. It's fine. But, you know, you still have to present this thing. So you need to sell yourself as a package. You're not just the code. You're not just the design stuff. You're not just the Figma. You need to sell yourself as a package, you know? It's kind of like how, like travel agents, you know, they'll kind of break down. So you want to go to where are people going these days, Diani or whatever. You want to go to Diani, you know, and this is the price you have. We could give you a less quality room, but put you on all-inclusive where you have all drinks and meals paid for. See, so there's a trade-off. Everybody comes to the table with a trade-off. There is what we are strong at, there's what we're not. But you need to sell all parts of yourself so that even if they might not appreciate your experience so far, they can appreciate other things about you. And there's so many other skills you have that you can't put on a certificate or on a portfolio. Like they can't be seen, they can only be experienced. That's the first part. But for designers, people ask me, should I do this certification? I'm like, if you have the money and it is not putting a strain on you, pay for all of them, do them. But I want you to know these are just like an item. Nobody is going to like take them too seriously. People will want to see your portfolio. Build a portfolio and build it anywhere. It doesn't have to be this nice, beautiful websites. Go on Medium, create a free account, put 3 portfolios there written, and with, of course, with the designs themselves or links to your fitness. Put them there. That is it. You don't need much else. I just need to see your work.
Sasa, mimi niko na swali. I think I have a question for every section you've talked about. Like, I don't know. I'd say you say it's everything is free. It's on YouTube, which is true. It's on the internet, not just YouTube. But now you'll have to put in the work to like kuzifanya. So hizo bits of information and making sense of it. May try that nikanishinda. Imagine niko siri nisaidia. So I would say maybe I wouldn't like disqualify courses kabisa. Even if it's not just for the certification, it gave me the right one. Because I had learned a little bit of everything. I had thought I knew how to use them, but I had not known how to. So alafu mi nilifind out in a very bad way. Like nilifind out after nimepewa task. nikaulizwa kama mara mbili, nikasema yes I can, and I didn't end up finishing those tasks na zilikuwa zinaitishwa na client. Then you can notice, yes, I might know what this is or what it does or how it's done, but there's just some disconnect, hence the roadmap. Yeah. But I also really like how you talked about selling yourself. Like, make sure someone understands what you bring to the table vizuri, yani. Like, anatoka hapo anajua ni sawa, hata kama si the level of a designer I wanted, huyu anaweza jibuild afike hapo.
That's true.
I will say, I'm not saying don't do courses. I'm saying don't pay for them. I'm saying the free ones are sufficient. That's what I'm saying. Because you will break bank and then it will break your heart. Unapeleka ati, I have done UX design from Google, and they'll tell you, this doesn't matter if you don't have a portfolio. We need a portfolio. We need to see how you think. The course doesn't tell me you know how to think. In fact, the course enforces a very rigid way of thinking. Ukienda corporate, there are some things you learn in those courses. Unafika hapo, you're like, kai, kwani people don't follow the rules? Yeah, we don't, because maisha ikwangi perfect. Hatuwezi fuata ati venye Google wanafanya vitu. Hata wao hawafuati venye wameweka kwa hiyo course. Some things you have to think on your feet. Agile and all those things, those buzzwords they use. So I'm not saying don't do courses. I am saying free resources are available that will give you even more than those paid courses. Because the moment you pay for a course, it's like people think now this is a key. Hii ni master key. Kila padlock ninaingia, nafaa kufungua zote.
Then mi nilimiss your point time yangu. Sasa juu hiyo story juu nilimiss point na kuna watu wana miss point the same way. Na hizo free resources venye uko nazo, utanisaidia niweke watu kwa description.
Oh, for sure. 100%. But if it helps, I just went and did introduction to UX design on YouTube, and then I watched like a couple of videos, and that was it. I never did more than that. Everything I've learned in UX design has been now in the context of a job.
Kama mimi, I can say like I started design some years back for fun because I'm a front-end developer. So ikafika mahali nikafeel na lose focus. Like I study something, I'm learning something. I feel like I'm not, because I was juggling between. It's like I don't have a roadmap. I'm reading this today, the other. I feel that's hiyo ndio kitu nafanyanga watu wengi wanakuwa stuck in between when they're doing self.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. But sasa mimi niko na swali lingine different. Nimetoka gani kama mimi I really want to move away from front end to the product designer. But sasa which method do you use to present your work convincing lile yenye nikiweza presentia stakeholders wako zile wanakia. I love your idea.
Awesome. So you're coming from front-end engineers. Let me tell you, a front-end engineer who becomes a designer becomes a really good designer. And but once you do become a designer, you can take it, you can believe it or not, but the engineers really trust you because of your previous experience. And you're bound to design with less constraint for the front-end engineer because you have that knowledge. I'm not going to lie to you, there are times I design things and then, like an engineer will be like, Wangui, this is going to be harder to implement than if you moved it to this side because the library doesn't allow for it. It's just going to take more work and it doesn't make sense. And it hits me, oh my gosh, if I had remembered my previous coding stuff, I would have remembered this. Like if I kept learning and I didn't neglect code altogether, because I think I did, I would have this in mind. And if you go online and just check for coding skills that designers should learn, it's usually always front-end design or web design. So it's a good thing. Anyway, so you've asked, what have you asked? Could you repeat the second question? How do you get people to trust your ideas?
No, how do you present your work? Your work. Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I feel like before you present your work, there's some steps. Hapo mwanzo. Is it okay if I start with those ones? Because I feel like even in my notes that I made, the presenting your work is like the last step. It's not. Yeah. Okay. So, first of all, wherever you will be, whether it is not in a company or in a company, whether you're doing your own like free projects, open source projects or not, there are always design principles, methods, and ethics you have to follow. So you need to know those. What does that look like? Use a design system that is industry standard. You don't have to create your own. You can take one that exists and then tweak it. And that's what I even do. So one of the best that I know is used a lot is the Google material. Very many companies use that. You can't tell, maybe because they tweak everything. They change the colors, maybe they change the border radius, they tweak things here and there, but they use the material design because it's industry standard. The good thing about using industry standard design systems is they're also updated by the people who created them, so it's not up to you to do that stuff or to figure that stuff out. And design systems can be very big, so why put your mind through the burden of designing everything from scratch, while you can take something that's already there and then tweak it to your desire. So use industry standard design systems. They've already thought through so many things, especially for mobile. I think for web design, for anything on the web, anything web app, you have a bit more freedom. But for mobile, because of the size of the phone, there are some constraints you have to follow. So if you're like designing for iOS, just use the design system or the design system guidelines that exist. So for some technologies, they don't give you the design system itself. Like you want to get a Figma file with buttons, but they will give you the guidelines. So if you're going to create a design system from scratch, create using those guidelines. Tweak here and there where there is an allowance, and they will often explain that, but don't reinvent the wheel. So that's like the first part. I've ever made the mistake of, I'm going to tell you some of the mistakes I made. I've ever made the mistake of, I got into a company and then the first design assignment they ever gave me, I didn't follow the design system. And everybody was so confused. They were like, what do you want me to talk about? So, and it was just like, it was embarrassing to some degree, but I realized, so there are companies that take design systems so seriously, because I had come from a place where it was a startup and it was just agile, think on your feet. You don't have to follow rules to the line. But I came there to an organization where they were like, our buttons don't look like that. You can't use checkboxes that look like this. We already have something in the design system. So it kind of builds even your discipline to adhere to that rule of just going with the specific company ethics and stuff like that on design. If you're by yourself and it's just your portfolio you're using, you can exercise some freedom, but it builds confidence if you try and use the ones that exist as well. Moja tumia the IBM one, it's called Carbon. Use the Carbon design system for this project. On the next one, use Material. On the next one, use the Atlassian design system. Just play around with them, because if you apply for a job in a company where they use the Material design system, you've already checked one box. They know that if they bring you in, you're not going to feel lost using those components. So that's the first step. And that one is at the step where you're still creating your stuff. Any questions?
I love that, and also like there's this thing also I foresee it to come after me. I'll present my work. It's approaching the feedback from senior designers or team members with different perspectives.
Accepting the feedback, you said?
Approaching the feedback from senior designers, yes.
Like mimi wacha sasa nikwambie, mimi nimepewa feedback jana. Mimi nilikuwa najua nimefanya the best of, like mimi mpaka nikiona hivi mimi naweza iframe, yani niweke kwa nyumba yangu. Alafu nimepata feedback, very valuable feedback in fact. But mimi nimefika point yenyewe naweza chill kwanza, alafu nisikize feedback, alafu ni process and then I work on it. Like I sort the chief from the chaff hivyo. But kuna point yenye me, it was so hard to take in feedback nilipewa jana was so heavy, ninge break down. So like, how do you approach feedback?
I am not laughing.
Breakdown.
No. Oh my gosh. No. By the way, I'm on your side. I have ever broken down because of, design feedback, and I will address that. It's like my last point, and I'm making notes so that I can answer your question. So I was laughing because I was not laughing at you. I was laughing with you. And although I don't think you are laughing, but yes, I was laughing with you. Because of Babu, I've been there. I've been there and I hear you. So I will address that as the last point. It's my last point. And it's in fact, it's the biggest one to me. In as far as my career is concerned, that's the one the way ukiambiwa it's the apocalypse, what do you put in your bag? Utembee nayo and survive a couple of days. That one, the point I will give to that answer is what I put in my bag. It's not the Figmas or the design systems. These are just like operational stuff. So, is that okay? Can I answer it at the end?
Okay.
Okay. Can I go to my next point? Cool.
Yes.
So you've designed, you've used the design system, the rules, the guidelines, blah, blah, blah. The first part of like presenting your ideas to people is be ready to answer why. So because the design already tells them the what, but like, why have you done it like that? Why should we use, what do we call this scrolling method where the scrolling just continues over and over and over? Why should we use continuous scrolling as opposed to, swiping? Why should we use X as opposed to Z? Be ready to explain the why. I think this is the part where I normally feel like designers should have data skills, and I am biased because I have the data skills and I got into design with these data skills, but designers should have data skills. In some organizations, utakuwa supported by data analyst, maybe someone who can pull the data for you. Ama a UX researcher, someone who will help you understand what the data is saying and like give you design recommendations. But in some places you won't have that. When I was working at a startup, I was everything. I was PM, I was designer, I was data analyst, I was UX researcher. I was everything. So, sometimes, especially because you're a newbie, your first job might be at a startup. It's highly likely that it is because startups tend to absorb newbies more. So it's important to have the skills of data and like, if you're recommending that a button be moved to a different position and you can vouch for yourself and be like, users complained that when the button is there, they don't notice it. So when they're about to do XYZ, they keep looking at the screen, searching for the button, and that takes 5 seconds longer in their work, 4 seconds longer, And, with UX design, it's about shaving the seconds. We never think about it as minutes. The moment you start talking about something is taking minutes to happen, that's usually an engineering issue. In design, we are trying to shave the seconds. So it's normally those small things. Support your work with data. Sometimes it's usually a bit different where, like for instance, in agri-tech, people keep giving farmers mobile apps. I am very against that. At this stage, for African farmers, I think it's premature. I think we should make technology work for farmers, but not by making them carry their phones to the farm. That doesn't make sense. And even for a really large demographic of these people, they don't even have smartphones. They have feature phones. And even those feature phones, for some of them, they don't, they're not like us. Simu yako ni kila kitu, iko na to-do list yako, shopping list iko na pesa zako. They're not like us. The phone is just a tool, which means anaweza enda soko na iache kwa nyumba kama akona cash. So I am usually against that. So whenever someone comes to me and tells me we should give farmers an app, I usually have my data. I have research from the field, research that has been done by real researchers like PhDers and master's students. I have data that has been analyzed according to like what type of technology has reached the farmers, and that's what I present to them. They're still allowed to shoot me down, by the way. People can still say, no, me, I think it can happen. I usually tell people, shooting you down is not the bad thing. It's not a sentence. Si hukumu, kukuambia, mi naona bado hii inaweza happen. But you know what? The sweetest feeling is that I told you so feeling. And I've had this a lot of times where I present data to someone and they still insist, no, Wangui, I just think we are not being imaginative. And I'm like, you know what, sir, madam, we will do it your way. Tutafanya njia yako.
Yeah.
So we do the thing, it takes effort, it takes time, we give the technology to whoever we are giving it to, and then they don't use it. It's important that people remember Art Ndiema had told us that this might not work. We fought her on it, we still did it, but she had presented good information and research that this will not work. So when they're coming back to the table to be like, okay guys, we need to regroup, we did something that didn't work, now they trust you. You warned them and it didn't happen. Now they trust you. But if you don't speak up, if you don't share your point of view, it doesn't have to be accepted for it to be shareable. It just needs to be supported by data and research. That's it. So using data and making sure you present it in such a way is really important.
Nice. Today you've given me a different perspective of a product designer. Oh, a designer, because you have introduced the story of data being a data.
Oh yeah, me too.
Because
Yes.
for me, I knew like it's most of, if you're a graphic designer, to be a designer, it's much easier to design a product probably. But adding on to data,
See, probably some watu wanna speak from experience. Watu wajue it's good to be a graphic designer, be a designer, be a data analyst, be a designer.
Yes.
Sasa anza kusema graphic design. Sindio?
Chantal, personally, everything is related at the end of the day. It's not just you have to be a designer. Unakumbuka ilikuwa primary ama ilikuwa high school, somewhere in biology or science they told us about interdependence of animals in the jungle. We are still animals even in the workplace. So your jobs is a way more interdependent on each other, because like what we said in the previous episode is tulikuwa tunaongelea about wewe kama designer usiweke unrealistic designs zenye developer atakuwa aye mimi nafanya kazi gani hapa. How am I going to code? It can be designed, but how can I code this? This is going to take me forever, and it's just one small feature that's not even part of the whole. It's not even a functionality. So I think everyone is interconnected. You're not an island.
But also, art, I would say, even those ones that can't be developed, design them. So, but all have a balance between designing for realistic things that can be engineered easily and then designing for art's sake. That one, and I normally feel like me, if you go to my Dribble, it has like very few projects. I have never updated it, but it has one project where I decided to just, it's like unachukua marangi zote unamwaga kwa canvas. I decided to just go all out. That one was just meant for people to see that deep down, there's a part of me that's an artist. It doesn't always have to be developed into software, but there's part of me that is creative, that can find beautiful ways to make things. But there's also the other side of me where I can design for something that needs to be developed quickly. So have a nice balance. Like usi neglect. Whenever I see those things, I always appreciate them. I'm like, oh my gosh, this person designed something amazing. And then I realized, hey, it would have taken long to develop this, but that's not the point. It's beautiful. If we get to the point where it is easy to engineer these things, there will be wonderful experiences. So, si kila kitu inakuanga ya ati lazima ikuwe coded, just have a nice balance.
When developer msikie.
Exactly.
When developer msikie.
Kuna ile ya kuuza woga. Kama kuna ingine niliona, was it yesterday or the other day? Yule nizia woga nikasema sijafika babe.
Anyway, I had this other question. This is a question from the newbies and from the, how do I say it? Yeah. The ones still learning. This is a question. You said you were an analyst, right? And right now you're a designer. Okay. In the comrade society of Kenya, people, I'm a students, always sit down and, before ufike hapo hivyo, let me give an example of, when you're in high school, na mlikuwa mna converse, mna bishana between which job is better than which, and which one is better than which, and after we are like, no, this is better than this because of this and this and this and this. So most of us have been told how data analyst is a good job by ikona do mingi hadi kuliko engineers. I don't know, it's from doing, you know, when you do research online, most of these things you'll be given research from, not from Africa, number one, because the developing world in Africa versus Europe and the States is so different. Oh, nilikuwa fikirianga utaenda kwa ofisi. This time I did an internship. Nafikiria naenda kwa ofisi napata niko na gaming session, kuna place ya kukaa na kuchill, kuna place ya video games, alafu kuna place ukibweka kucode na tu unakaa tu una relax. No. It's just a normal office. So why did you quit data analyst, and why did you stop being a data analyst, and why you're a designer right now? And then data analyst versus designer versus developer versus a full stack software engineer. Thoughts?
Oh my gosh. So with the coding part of me, I didn't quit. I gave it a pause. So I'll go back. So that one I can't say I quit. It's just, Huwezi kula githeri kila siku unless you're in a Kenyan high school. You can't eat githeri every day. You bring in variety. You eat githeri a while. Pesa unalipwa salary end month. Unaleta samaki, kuku. Ikifika the second week, cabbage ugali, That's just how life goes. You wonder different things as you go. But data analyst, I quit because I was bored. So I got bored. And I wanted a bigger challenge. And design gave me that challenge.
Sorry. You weren't selector. You were bored.
Yes, I was bored.
In short, umesema data analysts have boring jobs.
It depends on the industry, guys. If you go to an FMCG, do you know what FMCGs are?
No, I don't.
Fast moving consumer goods company, FMCG, Coca-Cola, Unilever, these industries, this is what were manual big those ones who move goods zenye zinaenda retail ama wholesale na zinabaiwa often. The data never changes, my guys. The challenge never changes. The data is always clean. Kwanza, that's the first thing. If you go to a big company, they always give you clean data. You don't even have to clean the data. Wanachukua data, wanaipitisha through like a second party organization that cleans things up for you, and then they give you clean data. Now you just have to create reports from that data. The most creative you will be is at the point where you're creating dashboards. And then you also need to remember data analysis is a support role. When IT support, same thing. You are mostly reacting. You are not being proactive. It's people coming to you to make requests for what they want. So if they are not creative, you're also not doing creative work. And I'm not saying the people I was working with were not creative. I just think the industry needs a set. Yeah, it's not creative. Like, it's the same thing over and over and over again. So, like, people who go to FMCGs and they become data analysts, because I have some friends who still do that, the way they bring creativity to their work is through, like, automation. Because automation, one, cuts their work. If you're creating the same report over and over again, automate how you can do it. Now, that's a challenge. That's a sweet spot. The second part is like dashboards. When I was working as a data analyst, the organization I was working with, they only used Excel. And I was like, Power BI is here, and you people have money to pay for this. Why are we not using it? And I really pushed for it. I had a really good boss, though. I pushed for it with him, and then he went and carried on the agenda, and he really advocated for my idea. And when Power BI came, my zeal for the job came back. But then pia unajua kitu ikiwa mpya, of course you're excited. Ukishaanza kuzoea kuitumia, life becomes easy and it stops being a challenge and you want another challenge. So I got bored, not of the discipline, and I want to make that very clear, because sitaki ndani all data analyst jobs are, no, not of the discipline. The discipline of data analyst, I still use data until today, and I'm a very big advocate for data analysts. But the job in the context can be interesting or boring. For me, in that context, it was boring. But it is data analysis that introduced me to my design capabilities. So I directed to that side. But you asked a second question, which was, like industry standards. People say this pays more than that. Hey. It depends on the industry. Again, if you're a machine learning engineer in a company that doesn't need a lot of machine learning engineers, you might find your salary is the same as the software engineer salary. If they're the ones who are more needed in that company, then they might be higher paid. It depends on unachezea wapi. If you're a designer who was brought into an industry just because they were like, we just need someone to clean things up occasionally, they might not value you that much. So your salary might not be the best. But if you're in an industry that is design hungry, a company that is design hungry, they value their designers. So they might be the highest paid person. So it just depends so much context and nuance. And that's why I never do those, what is a designer paid in Kenya? I never do that. I go by company. If I want to work at your company, I want to know what you pay designers, because I know it will not make sense in the larger scheme. It will only make sense in the context of your company. So that's how I think about it. I will say though, tech has an affinity for paying engineers more, and that is not a lie. And you just need to accept that. And be content. Not be content with peanuts, but be content with the fact that even the tech wameamua the most important person tends to be an engineer in whatever capacity. And even within engineers, not all engineers are the same. If you're an AI ML engineer, you might be higher paid than a software engineer. You might be higher paid than a front-end engineer. So wanyama hawafanani kwa hii shamba. They're all different animals. It just depends what farm you're on. So I don't think there is a gauge. Even when you said something, the market in the States and the UK, let me break your mind, because there was a time I did want to work in these countries, and I realized it's only the US that pays tech people as high as they do. In the US, for an engineer who is getting 100K a year, if you go to the UK, that same engineer is getting 70K euros a year. Now, I know there's still an exchange rate between dollars and euros, but if you convert them, NSD, sorry, yes. If you convert them, engineers are paid less in Europe than they are in America. America is the only place where you hear these exorbitant salaries for tech roles. The rest of the world is not doing that. Not Australia, not the Akina Russia, the Soviets, these were not doing that. It's only America. So if you want these flowery salaries and gaming rooms, either you go and work in the gaming industry or you go to America. So it's only America that has these exorbitant salaries. And I found that out when I was researching. If you go to Scandinavian countries and like Akina Norway, Netherlands, it's even less. And it's because of the way these countries are. It's fine. You want to get a higher salary, but your standard of life will be very good even with the salary you have. So there's so much nuance and context. You can't put a blanket and say only ML engineers are paid the highest. It depends. If you're in America, probably you will be a very well appreciated engineer.
So now that tunaongelea pesa.
Thank you. Okay.
Tunaongelea pesa.
Tunaongelea pesa, and you're a Kenyan, and you're a product designer. Kuna hii game the world has been playing. Of course I'm Kenyan. Of course so nataka hata sisi tukue very specific. Of course I am a Kenyan product designer. Just two each. Ndiema you're the answer. Wangui is thinking. Ndiema, you go first. Then you choose the next person.
Hey, Jameni. Prep.
I think I'm ready with one. But sijui kama mta-agree. But it's been my experience so far.
So, shoot.
I'll say, of course, I'm a Kenyan designer. Anything related to engineering is none of my business.
Woo! Louder, sis. Lakini mimi ni product designer. Sifai kuagree na wewe.
I am a product designer too, and sometimes I'm just like, in those meetings, I'm just like, this has nothing to do with me, but I should listen.
Like,
So-
of course, I'm a designer. Everyone thinks I'm a flower girl.
Wewe ni mtoto wa kurembesha vitu.
Thank you for saying that. Yes, utafanyaje?
I think I have another one.
Nominate.
Of course, I'm a Kenyan product designer or UX designer. So everybody thinks I can also do graphics design.
That one.
Si ndio hiyo yako sasa. Sasa useme version yako.
Ishasemwa. Saying hiyo band umetoa I'm a product designer, but people think I'm a graphic designer. It has made me literally to become a graphic designer first.
Mimi nilikataa. Nilisema zi.
At least ni own hiyo title pia.
Oh my God, I have fought that completely. Nilikataa kabisa and I said I'm not doing it. This is not what I do.
Yeah. Nimepata people. Of course, I'm a product designer. People expect me to automatically be a front-end developer.
Yeah. Or at least a web designer. At the very least, people think you have to do that.
But you should. How can you?
I actually agree with Elvis on this one, because even the Google product design course, I think they get to teach HTML and CSS. That's very important. Because how will you do design QA if you can't read code, if you can't like extract code from like inaitangwaje developer tools? You know, you kind of have to know that part.
Yo, mnapewa wase wangu pressure. Watu wangu msianze kucode kwanza. No, let them first settle in design and then wafikirie kucode. Mimi niko na bahati nilianza kucode kwanza. But mtu anaanza sai. Wacha tu wafuate kwanza design before afikirie kwenda kufanya HTML CSS.
Si issue ni yeye kucode. At least ako anajua, anaelewa front end kunafanyika nini. You get it?
Aya, sawa. Ndiema wewe una agree watu wa code? Pia juu ya design.
Okay. Kujua ku design. Personally, me najua code. So personally, me coding, I think it helps me to think like a developer in a way. But I don't think it's a must. Personally, I don't think it's a must. But if you want to, it's very helpful.
Ndiema unajua umesema nini? Mimi siwezi sikia ndiema. Personally, I don't think it's a must. Yeye mwenyewe amesema yeye mwenyewe ni developer. Alafu hapa Wangui amesema it's important.
Yeah, like mimi nilianza sisikia Chantal. Mimi nilianza na programming. Like my whole tech nini ilianza na programming. Technically nilianzanga high school. Hadi nilianza kama jokes. Mimi sikuwa serious about it. So I was already introduced to programming at first. I didn't know what UI. Hadi sikujua kuna kitu kama UI UX. Mimi juanga tu kuna software engineer. Period. Alafu kuna mobile programmer, alafu kuna watu wa web. Ni hivyo. Alafu kuna watu wa kufanya robots. Robots.
Developer. Umerukaje upate? Join mobile developer.
No, but kuna flutter.
Yeah,
No, my point
nikianza,
is, I get you.
Okay.
Ndiye maana kupata ulianza na development. Sisi wote we have. And that's my point right here. There's a listener feeling like ni sawa wanasema si lazima lakini wote wamecode. Una get?
Me I can say it this way. Ni vile ukiangalia place yetu kwa our experience outside here, you find most of the people they don't know kuna product design, kuna UI design. So people tend to get into tech, they start with coding and then they're like, kumbe kuna hii place ingine ya colors.
Exactly.
Dark team inanipatia.
Ati Canva.
Colors.
Dark team inanipatia.
Okay.
Makala.
Ni sawa. Kuna mtu alishindanga ametwitter tu urembo.
Ati umetudharau.
Nakwambia flower girl.
That's actually so funny. Ati kuna hii part ya colors. Gosh. Oh gosh. Let me explain that though, Art. I am not saying that they should start with development. I am saying, do your design, start with it. Utafika point in your career.
I'm also saying that here.
Sorry?
I'm also saying you don't have to
No.
start with coding. You don't have to start with programming.
But that's,
You have
no,
to start
you
with
don't.
programming.
It is better, but you don't have to.
But you need to know.
Exactly.
But you need to know.
Yes.
At
But
what point in your design,
even to know, I would say I wouldn't put pressure on a designer to know beyond front end, to be honest. Unless they want to start being a designer, like embedded in other engineering places, which I don't know. I've never heard of. I've heard of designers working with ML people. I've heard of designers working with software engineers. I've never heard of designers working with backend, because backend is just a different animal. And I'm not sure what the design work there is. Mostly software design. It's not like design the way we do it. So I'm not saying they should start
There's
with
no
it.
design in backend.
Or database design.
Or database design. But my point is, you don't have to start with it. But kutafika point, unaambiwa, go and QA, go and do quality analysis or quality audit, yes, of a website or a web app. You're in a company, devs wamefanya kazi, lakini something about devs, they just never do it the way the design is. So you have to go in there and point them and tell them, hii hamchafanya venye nimeweka, hii color iko wrong, hii opacity iko wrong. You'll have to go to the dev tools and read the code and find the specific colors or find the specific div that doesn't have a good padding or a good margin. It's important to have that skill to do that. At some point, when you become an interaction designer, then the issue becomes trade-offs. The trade-off of how much resources do we have qua server, what kind of machines are our users using, what kind of mobile devices are they using. So that is the trade-off versus what things do we want this app to do. If you want the app to do something that for the majority of the users, their phone cannot handle it, you need to be able to conceptualize that. These things, like the easiest concept is like latency. You have people using your software, but for some reason there are latency issues. You're an interaction designer. You're supposed to suggest ways to reduce the latency. From a design perspective, you will just say it as a designer, and then the engineer will interpret what they need to do on the code. So that's why I'm saying you still, at some point, yes, you will manage. As a junior, you will manage. But as more and more responsibilities start coming in, as you start being involved in more meetings with engineers, you'll need to have a way to communicate with these people beyond just colors.
You have to paraphrase that.
I think now my listeners get it. As our very masterpiece art Ndiema and our very noble guest Wangui Kamande says, yes, ni sawa kuwa na knowledge ya front-end lakini usijue nayo, si lazima. Si ndio?
Si lazima. Kama mimi sipendi colors. Lakini nataka
Oh my gosh.
Na wale wenye
That is so crazy, Elvis, because my next point was you need to know color psychology and UX psychology to defend your answers to people. Otherwise.
True. Works always.
But help me on this. I always don't know colors. I only know color codes and how they appear on the screen. Never on a red in a car maroon. The eyes of a man,
Okay. If you are colorblind, you should get help for that. I will just start there. Because I don't know, it's hard to be a designer when you can't see colors correctly. But I get what you mean. But color psychology has nothing to do with knowing what color. It's just knowing that red in our context is associated with error messages, but red in the context of China is a color of good luck. So you can't use it to show error messages. You see, so there's a cultural aspect, there's a knowing what colors represent. That's what color psychology is. It's not just about knowing that blue looks like this and yellow looks like this. It's about knowing what does it signify in this context, and is it appropriate?
Okay. I get you. You also had some stuff to tell us.
At the last, before we wind up.
Okay, cool. I think there were two more. Let me just rush through them. So the other way you can learn how to defend or justify your decisions is to have meetings before the main meeting. you'll be meeting with, create relationships with your UX researcher if you have one, with your data analyst, the one who pulls the data for you, have meetings with an engineer, like have an engineer friend mwenye utakuwa ukimpresentia beforehand, unamwambia niulize maswali, break down my idea completely so that I see the gaps. Because if you design without another voice in the room, you're very biased. You only see your point of view. Have these people in the room. What I do is usually I present to my teammates who are also designers, and then if I feel blocked still, I will approach like a product manager and show them my idea and tell them, do you think this would work? Is this relevant? You see, so this is the meeting. These are the small meetings before the big meeting where you get to present to everyone. So by the time I'm getting to the main meeting, I know all the questions that will come. I have already anticipated them. I have already found answers to them. If there is something I needed to change in the design, I've already done it. And this becomes a way for people to learn to trust you, because if you included my voice before you showed me the design, I am bound to trust you more. And if you showed me your rationale, tukiwa kwa meeting nione, unategwa ulimi, unashindwa kujidefend, I can defend you because I already know what you had in mind when you were doing this work. So, and I've found that, the moment you start explaining something and then people aren't quite understanding you or don't quite trust you, the moment a second voice agrees with you, and this voice they already have their own trust with these people tend to come on board and they'll be like, okay, yeah, I agree with this because when we were working on it, this and this is what happened. So collaborate with people before that big meeting. Collaborate. Ask people questions and tell people to attack your idea. And I remember Art had asked approaching feedback. So even when I was like getting in, it was really tough to take feedback. And now when I look back, because I have some copies of my old designs, I'm like, hey, lakini these people were right. What were these things I was doing? So now in hindsight, I'm even able to see that their criticism of my work was correct. And it only sounded like criticism because, it was coming from someone who's more experienced and stuff like that. But how I get around this is, first of all, and I'm going to say for Art specifically, because she's the one who asked this question, you are not your work. You are not your work. You are not buttons and a mobile interface. So when people criticize your work, they are criticizing your work, not you. The work, yes, you produced it, but it is not who you are. You're not your work. And that is the biggest thing I carry. I think after getting used to the thought that I'm not my work, I take in feedback very easily. In fact, I don't even care if you say something bad. And I always go with the mantra, I am okay with finding out that I am wrong. I could be wrong and I'm okay with finding that out because that's the only way you learn. So but there are two different types of feedback. There are people who go out of their way to be rude and malicious, and that is not what I'm talking about. If people go out of their way to be rude and malicious with the feedback they give you, you should put boundaries, definitely, and tell them, mimi huwa siongeleshwi hivi hata na baba yangu. Kwa hivyo pia wewe hutaniongelesha hivi. So no, it's important. If you don't let your father talk to you like that, why should somebody else do that? So if people go out of their way to be rude and malicious about their feedback, you need to put them in line so that they also find a way to communicate their feedback in the right way. And if this is in the context of a client, I always say, you need this work done. I need you just as much as you need me. But if you're going to behave like this, maybe I am not the designer for you. And I'll just tell you, you know what? Hapa tumefika, ni mwisho, nimefika stage, wata mimi nishuke. The journey it is not for me, it is not my journey. So, but if people...
Naamua divorce inakuanga hiyo.
Tunachana tu vizuri, hatupigani.
But imekuhapenia?
Yes, it has.
Hapenia before with a client?
Client? No. I do tend to turn people down the moment I see the vibes are not vibing. But in a corporate sense, and I think with clients it's easier for me because, it's in a job context is what is harder for me because I have to see this person the next day. I have to be in a meeting with them the next day. I have to keep seeing their face around me the next day. So in that case, if the issue is that you don't like how they communicate feedback, always have a discussion with them and tell them if you communicate feedback like this, I find it more useful and I'm able to work on it better. I've had such conversations with people I work with where I realize So the people I work with come from a culture that is very courteous. Very courteous. The please, thank you, they never say anything rudely. They're very nice. But the problem with niceness is sometimes they're not clear with their feedback. Najua, unaonyesha mtu design anakwambia, this is nice, but I really hate that. I had to have like conversations with my bosses and with people I work with, and I told them, you talk to me directly. You don't take me through the corners because you're wasting my time. I have to think through, you have given me a compliment, then ndani ukaweka criticism and then another compliment. And I know it's a psychology thing. It's called sandwiching, where if you want to tell someone something difficult, you sandwich it between good things so that they don't take it too difficult. But for me, when it comes to design feedback, just tell me it is shit. Please just say it like that, because you will waste my time. You have started with a compliment and then you're saying something different and then you're confusing me. I don't know whether you guys have seen the Key and Peele skit of the chef, and they were showing how, like, on these chef shows with like Gordon Ramsay, they taste the food and then the chef keeps saying things that are confusing.
Yeah,
exactly. Now, I cannot deal with such communication, and I have had to tell people, if you don't like something, tell me you don't like it. I am not my work, and I am okay with finding out. Me si kazi yangu, by the way. I'm not a button. I am not a checkbox. I am not UI. I am Wangui, and I'm separate from my work. That is just something I produce, and it's okay for it to be critiqued. You will love it. Someone else will not love it. It doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's not your preference. But we can always course correct to get to the goal together. So you are not your work. You are never going to be your work. But if the issue is rudeness and malice and just them being a bad communicator, that is very different, and that should be dealt with in a different way. But you're not your work. And I have been through it.
I like how...
I have been through it, and I've gotten to the point where I say I am impenetrable. You cannot make me feel like a bad designer just because you didn't like something I did. That design was not good. I have produced other good work. Ni hiyo tu ndo niliteleza kidogo, sikufanya poa. It's not me.
I like that vibe.
Nikakumbuka hata mimi nilirudishia client pesa.
Bas.
Wallahi.
Imagine it's fine.
So tumesema we tell them to talk to us directly. Don't cut through the corner.
No, that was my style. There are people who don't like the directness. So if it's your style, tell them.
Feedback is growth.
Yeah, for sure. But kuna wala wenye they like the sandwiching, and I totally acknowledge that. But for me, I told them, if you want me to sandwich my feedback for you, you tell me. But me, I'm usually direct, and I want you to know it's not about you.
Is confusing. Cheki, mimi niko na bahati. Mimi niko na mabrother. Na work na mabrother. They are very nice, very gentlemanly, but very logical. Huwezi cut through the corners.
Okay.
I've enjoyed the conversation. Uko na master classes za communication skills huko nyuma?
Hata si communication pekee. Like I need you here tena siku ingine.
I mean, we can always arrange.
Yeah, man, news.
We can always arrange. Sina master class.
Ni sawa. We'll organize another one because wow, this was mind blowing. Tuendelee tuna the same topic yani.
Yes.
Okay.
Alafu nimeambiwa next time nikikuja kwa show na wewe nijue kizungu.
Si lazima lakini, si lazima.
Wangui, we've loved you.
Okay.
We've loved you.
Thank you.
When you design mfiti, uko na akili si ya kuku. Na design ziko na luku. Umepass vibe check.
Thank you.
Utekume ni mrembo.
Ni mrembo na napenda colors.
Na kwa kizungu mingi.
Kizungu nilimwambia yangu ilikuja na mail lakini lazima nifunge.
Oh guys, subscribe tafadhali, follow, like, share. Of course, hawezi kuwa umekula tu hii information yote vizuri alafu gatekeep. We have a zero tolerance policy of gatekeeping in this podcast. Share, like, subscribe. I've been your host, Chantal Chendereta.
Mariga Elvis.
My lovely guest. Ambia watu wangu bado.
Yes, and I've been Wangui Commander. You guys are doing a cool thing with this design stuff and making it closer to the Kenyan context. And that's why I had to do this.
Thank you.
And I like the fact that I can mix languages like as I speak. Najua nimetumia Kiingereza nyingi, but still I like that I have that allowance. Thank you so much, and I would be happy to be back for another session.